morning and welcome to The Point for Wednesday, July 15th, 2020. Thank you to those of you joining us on our various platforms. We're not going to stick too much this morning. We're already a little bit behind, so we're going to get right into the discussion. This morning, joining us for this morning's program is Minister of Tourism and Civil Aviation, Honorable Clarice Modeste-Curwen. She is our guest this morning as Grenada prepares to reopen the Maurice Bishop, not prepares, but reopens the Maurice Bishop International Airport. She's just going to give us a little bit of updates on that as well as issues relating to tourism. And we're going to get a lot of discussion in with the minister. Good morning, Minister Curwen.
Good morning, Ms. Alexis, and good morning to Grenada, Carriacou, and PT Martinique. Thanks for the opportunity to share and to listen.
Thank you for joining us.
Listenership, yes.
Thank you very much. So let's get right into it. MBIA reopens this morning. I know a lot has gone into putting specific regulations in place to ensure that Grenada remains as COVID-free or COVID-19 free as possible. Reiterate for us some of the major things put in place to ensure that this process is carried out in a safe way.
Yeah. Okay. For the reopening process, one of the key things was deciding on protocols. Who should we let in? What would be the criteria? Who should we keep out? Who should we be more careful with? Who should we be more relaxed with? And what would be the requirements based on the decisions taken as to what I had mentioned just before? So we had to have persons, groups of persons or countries rather, categorized, and they were categorized into three areas: red, green, and yellow or amber, like the traffic lights. So green meant that you coming from a safe, well, relatively safe place or low risk, let's put it that way. Nowhere is really safe now from this COVID. So from a low risk area, and that involves mostly the Caribbean region, because most have done pretty well in either keeping out the disease or, when they found it, in containing it and managing it. We had the yellow or the amber, which Canada is part of, UK and most other European countries. And of course, the red zone, which you have some countries, our neighbor in the US is in a red zone, and the statistics attest to that. While we have not put it in yet, but we can mention certain countries like Brazil, which the numbers are. So there are a few countries that we have classified. We have been making more emphasis on the green zone, obviously. It is easier to manage, but once you open your borders, you can expect anything, because other Caribbean countries have their borders open. So if you're open to intra-Caribbean flight, then you have to be aware that you're opening to other countries that these countries would accept and we may not accept. So it is a complex situation, and it took us quite a while to come up with the protocols, the requirements, what did you do, what tests you should do, and so on. And we have come a long way. This thing is never perfect. It is very fluid. It changes. Even the advice we're given by the expert changes. So we have done our utmost to try to nail down on that, and it took a while. You would recall that we, not so long ago, we brought in a flight, a repatriation flight with JetBlue from New York. And that was a great experience for us, a trial run. One, it accomplished something that we had set out to do, to start repatriating Grenadians who are stuck internationally. But it also pointed out to certain gaps, certain weaknesses, certain things that we had not foreseen. And we had to roll back our opening date, which we had set at the 1st of July, to review some of these issues. And a lot of intense work has gone on, and we believe that we are in a very reasonable place at this time. So airport, which is our first port of entry, we had to do a lot of work there, infrastructural works that would separate the service, the person who's providing the service, from the customer. with the Perspex glass and all of these things. Also, infrastructural work included separating the arrival area so that persons who had to be tested were taken to one spot and then going over to immigration and to customs. We had to have an isolation room just in case someone showed an elevated temperature or showed any other symptoms. That person would immediately be pulled out from the line and taken to an isolation room where they could be attended to by the medical team. So all of this has been done. But there are other things like, for example, depending on the decision, whether you're red or green or amber in between, and what has to happen to you from there, some would have to be taken into specially designated accommodation. So it's not just you going anywhere now. We had to put a list together. It took us a while to complete the accommodation. It's still ongoing, but by Thursday evening, we expect to have all of those accommodation in place, and that will be online as well. So now a lot of our information is online. The COVID site and the tourism site also has information, and it has cost us a lot of effort, but I think it was well worth it, and I think we are really ready to open.
One of the concerns I've had and I've heard from members of the public relates to, like you mentioned earlier, there are countries that are in the red zone that would not be allowed to enter Grenada for now. And just in case they may be able to get to one of our neighboring islands, what measures are in place to ensure that they do not try to trick the system in terms of, let's say, they leave the US, they go to St. Vincent and try to get here? How would we guard against that as much as possible?
Very important question. What we have done is we've spoken with immigration, the police and immigration on that they have to review very carefully the passport to see what stamps are in the passport. They are also working on something that is called an advanced passenger information with international organizations to try to get a sense early upfront of who is traveling and where they're going to and that sort of thing. We hope that with diligent review of passport, travel document, and also with linking up with regional and international information systems, that we should be able to. But there's always the possibility that someone can slip in. I've seen it happening in other countries, and so it's a very valid question, and we'll try to be as vigilant as we can be in that regard.
A lot of the conversation has been in relation to the opening of MBIA, but what about the cruise ports? I know the cruise ship has been a major part of our tourism industry. A lot of the cruise ships have not been offering cruises, however. But when are we going to officially open that part of the industry, even if there are no ships traversing the waters?
We have been a bit more cautious with the cruise port, primarily because when cruise ships come in, you have a large volume of people descending on our port at the same time. And these cruise ships carry thousands, 100 plus these people. So it's a more difficult situation to manage and put in place. So we prioritized airport. Because of that, we thought it was easier to manage and we could learn lessons, but we are also starting to talk cruise port now. Just about a week ago or a little more, the cruise industry met with heads of governments and ministers for tourism and ministers for health to discuss this matter, of course, virtually, to discuss this matter. The Caribbean team was led by Honorable Mia Mottley, Prime Minister of Barbados. And there is an agreement now on both sides to have representatives that would form a committee, a working committee, task force, if you will, and they are looking at how it's going to be done. So while we would love to welcome back the cruise ship port opening and cruise ships coming in, a date has not been set, and it is something that we have to have an ongoing conversation about.
Personally, I'm not in a hurry for that part of it, but just asking. As it relates to the repatriation of Grenadian nationals, we've done a few flights for nationals in other countries. We've done repatriation of our cruise ship workers. What's the latest so far? Or if you can tell us maybe how many have been repatriated, an average number, if we're still expecting, I know we have 2 flights coming in from Trinidad today, but if we're expecting any more cruise ship workers and so, just update on the repatriation efforts.
I'm really happy to say that the cruise ship repatriation of cruise ship workers or seafarers was a challenge. But I think with good teamwork, Ministry of Health, Tourism, Port, even the tour operators, there was a lot of cooperation there, and we managed to pull it off. It was mostly uneventful. You had a few little hiccups there, here and there, as to be expected. Very few positives, which I was extremely happy about. And even those who tested positive on rapid tests, which demonstrated that they would have had contact with the disease at certain time, that number was few. And when they did the second test, which is the PCR, which gives an indication that the person has an active disease, viral disease going on there, we had very, very few. Nobody got ill. Everybody went home safely. And, I'm really pleased. So far, we've had over 300 persons coming back in from the cruise ships. What we've had now, and we've sent out requests, letters requesting information on any cruise ship that would have Grenadians, because initially you would think, okay, it's just 3 ships because these are the ones who have contacted us. And then another one would come and another one. And even the last one that came was massive, 113. And as I said, it did come with its difficulties, but we managed. And I know everybody's happy to be home. And as a government, we are very happy for that. So what we've been hearing is a few here and a few there. The biggest number I've heard is 13, which they had requested. We have a request to come in on the 18th. The others, I'm hearing about 1 here, 2 there, stuck in Asia or in Europe and so on. And with the resumption of flights, because it would not be cost effective to repatriate them with cruise ships, 1 or 2 persons coming all the way into the Caribbean, they're looking at flights. So with the opening of UK, for example, and other ports within the Caribbean, and of course, as of the 1st of August, we will be welcoming certainly airlines coming from the intermediate, the amber or the yellow zone. They will be to repatriate our citizens. So we've heard from cruise lines that told us that they're looking for flights. And we said to them, look, in the very near future, flights are going to come. Either they can come directly from UK to Grenada, hopefully, or if not, they can transit through one of the other islands and come in. But we are in conversation, and we think the bigger portion of them are over. And then we did the JetBlue with about 59 Grenadians. And I spoke about that before, that it was really a good dry run for us. And it went pretty well. We did have some hiccups, and we've sought to address them. And I think we're pretty much there at this time.
Preparing the facilities is one thing, but as it relates to preparing our human resource, the workers on the airport, the various departments, preparing our nurses and doctors, I know a lot of training has went into people that can be able to help with keeping COVID-19 at bay. Tell us some of those things that have been taking place and preparing, especially the folks at the MBIA.
Okay, so at MBIA, they've had a lot of training sessions. The GAA staff, the Grenada Airport Authority staff, as well as the airport services of Grenada, And so that when everybody has been trained, they've had a few drills, couple dry runs, and we've had a few small charters, and they have used those opportunities to get workers trained and ready to go. So we have been guided, apart from being guided locally or nationally by the Ministry of Health, we are also guided by IATA. They do send from time to time information to us as to how things should happen. And one of the things I was really happy about to hear from IATA was that they were recommending that persons coming into the country should have a PCR. And I'm saying that because this is part of our guidelines, and we did get some resistance from some airlines because, of course, additional time, maybe additional staff to check everybody, make sure that anybody who boards has a PCR negative test and so on. But I think the scenario in the US has convinced some persons that that is necessary. And with IATA putting out that declaration, it has helped us in our discussions with the airline. So a lot of talk is going on in the background there as to when persons come. And I know that is not the question you've asked, but I'm just linking it. And they are working with us. We're going to start with these countries, especially red countries, to do charters, because then we can focus on one flight. We can focus on the test results, the health declaration forms that have been formulated and have been put out on the website now on the agreement to be subjected to testing, because if we find anyone who tests positive on any one test, they will be required to do repeat testings. And so we want them to agree to that before boarding the plane to come here, because then we don't want them to pull anything on us and say we cannot test them, because then it becomes a problem. So that the forms have been put together, and they are on the website. Training in other areas of the sector, accommodation sector, very important too, because that is where our visitors are going to be staying, transportation, and food and beverages, and everybody else. Every sector has been trained. And this week, Tuesday and today, they will be training for persons who missed the training, because now through the Ministry of Youth, we have a team of young people who are joining the Ministry of Health, the accommodation inspectors, site inspectors, and also teaming up with Geoff Tourism. Every accommodation has to be certified. So only those who have satisfied the requirements, the checklist, these will be put online so that visitors coming in can book. Also, other things that we have done is to have conversation about how will we monitor persons who desire, they have a home, they live alone and would like to go home to be self-quarantined, or whole family coming in from wherever saying that we want to be quarantined. These facilities would have to be checked out to verify the information given. And also, we have to be able to monitor our returning national to ensure that they comply with what they have said they have agreed to do, because there is a form that they have to sign, but there's no guarantee that somebody agreeing not to go out, not to go to certain places, not to be in crowds, not to allow persons to visit them unnecessarily, that they will comply. And we've seen in other neighboring islands that certain persons did not comply. So we are awaiting the arrival of what they call a geofencing, a watch or wrist device that would tell the operator exactly where the client is at that particular time. And if they take it out, which they're not supposed to, there are devices that only the operator can put on, and having the device to remove it. So if it is removed, without the permission or the authorization of the operator, then an alarm goes off and that person can be tracked. We're also working on an app. There's a contract that has been signed with a provider, service provider, to work on an app. It did take a little while, and persons would have been looking for it recently and have not found it. But if it's not up yet, it will soon be up and running. And we did do some dry runs with it on a few returnees into the country. So we know that it works. It tells you where they are. And we want to get into the self-quarantine, which is a relief on the burden of all of the stakeholders. The police have to monitor all the sites and so on, ensure that persons are being compliant, and therefore we want to be able to trust. And I want to take this opportunity to throw out an appeal to all of my Grenadian people. Some wanted us to open up, some do not, and we understand the fear. And we are at a point where we have no demonstrated community spread. Everybody seems to be well. We have not had anyone dying on us. And so there's a certain level of complacency that maybe we cannot catch it, it's dead for Grenada, whatever. But it could be very much alive when we open up. And we have to open up at some point. We think this is a good time, but we are counting on the vigilance, the understanding, and the compliance of our own nationals. So you know that John just came in yesterday. He is on self-quarantine. Don't visit him. If he bring a little jeans for you, he'll give you afterwards. But don't visit. Stay safe and let John do what he has to do. And let Jane do what she has to do until it's 14 days. And even though we're looking at reducing the days as we see how this disease behaves, it may be reduced, but we're saying maximum of 14 days, except in very strange and unusual circumstances, someone may be required to stay longer. But the norm is 14 days. It has worked for us. And we're just asking to let persons who have to be self-quarantined do what they have to do. And we expect that those who are coming in will understand. We're sending out information to them to let them know what we expect of them. And this information will be tweaked from time to time as things change or our experience changes and we see maybe it's not necessary to go 14 days, or maybe it's not necessary to do too many tests, or maybe it's necessary to do more. These things will change. They are not written in stones, but I think we've come a very long way in putting them protocols together. Hard work has been done. We've researched what others have done. We've followed what some have done, and we have stuck to our guns with some things that we're saying we're not going that way. And all of it is designed to keep Grenada, Carriacou and Petit Martinique COVID-free. So it has to be a national effort. Otherwise, a lot could go down the drain.
And before we take the break, even opening MBIA today, there are no commercial flights coming in. Any idea when we will expect the first commercial flights?
Well, we did say that as of the 15th of July, which is today, we would be accepting intra-Caribbean flights. So the flights we've been talking to are Caribbean Airlines, a Trinidad-based company, Inter-Caribbean Airlines, and we have been talking to one Caribbean airline. Now, the first two, we have an agreement with them. We've done what we have to do to give them the permission. And so little ends, odd ends might have been tying up. I know they have put a sort of provisional schedule, which they have not posted as yet, but we expect that to be posted soon. We are also working with one Caribbean. This one had to do a little bit more because we have a regulatory body called ECA, which guides us in terms of safety and security of airlines, and they are going through that process to become one of the airlines that can bring in. I want to also just add here that intra-Grenada travel between Grenada and Carriacou, with SVG Air, they have had some change in management. We have had discussions with them, and they're pretty much ready to start flying again. We may have to do a little bit of marketing with them so that persons are aware. We are looking at also encouraging discovering paradise at home, which is our staycation. And we're saying to Grenadians, go out and enjoy what visitors offer. See it with a different eye. You get up every morning, you hear the waves, you see the beaches, whatever, the color of the sand, and we take these things for granted. People do love nature. They want to go to Grenada. And before I know you're having the break soon, but Grenada is an issue I want us to discuss at some point in time, and a bit on Annandale as well. But let us enjoy what we have. Go to Carriacou, see a different side of Grenada, and let us keep safe in Grenada, Carriacou, and Peterborough.
Granatang and Annandale are on my list, so we'll get to that after the break. We're speaking with
We'll get to that whenever you're ready.
Okay.
All right.
We're speaking with Minister of Tourism and Civil Aviation, Clarice Modeste-Curwen. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back with the discussions. We'll tackle the tourist sites, and then we're going to get to our viewers and listeners who may have comments, questions, queries, concerns for the ministers. Don't move. We will be right back.
Greetings, everyone. I hope this message meets you and yours in the best of health as we join in encouraging all to act responsibly.
COVID-19 presents the most serious
and deadly challenge
any of us will experience in our lifetimes.
We must act now.
We need to keep the Caribbean safe.
We can all help to stop the spread of the coronavirus. Please stay at home.
So Caribbean people, please stay home.
Caribbean people, please stay at home.
Please stay home. It's that simple. This too shall pass, but for now, stay home.
Stay in your yard. Stay home, stay safe.
The following are a list of food items to have on hand amidst COVID-19. Perishables like vegetables, fruits, provisions, and eggs. You are advised to stock perishable items to last up to 2 weeks. Non-perishable items including dry goods like cereals, flour, cornmeal, oats, rice, pasta, nuts and nut butters like peanut butter, crackers, canned or frozen meats, ready-to-eat canned meats, powdered or canned milk, dried peas and beans, canned fruits in natural juices, 100% canned fruit juices, and canned vegetables. You can stock non-perishable food items to last up to 1 month. Store bottled or clean drinking water, 1 gallon or more per day per person. If you suffer from a medical condition, have prescribed medications on hand. A message from the Grenada Food and Nutrition Council as we battle COVID-19.
Welcome back to The Point. We're speaking with Minister of Tourism and Civil Aviation, Clarice Modeste-Curwen. We're talking about the reopening of MBIA, the tourism industry, and some of our tourist sites, which is what we're going to get into right now. Minister, I believe it was late last week, over the weekend, I saw a picture and the post really on social media about the locking of the gate to the entrance to the Granatang Lake. What can you tell us about what's happening at Granatang? Or let me put it like Grenadians. Why can't I go in Granatang Lake?
Okay. All right. Yes, I know it has raised concern and quite unintentionally. The gates were closed primarily because the gate was one of the sides of the gate was broken and they had to be mended, but also because of the COVID situation and the closure of sites. All our sites were closed. Workers were sent home. There were no staff, and so on. And it was left closed that way, I guess, because, I guess the attention wasn't paid to opening the door. More focus was being made on getting ready. So if you go to Grenada now, you will see that they have the non-contact hand sanitizers. They have the hand soap and other things have been put in place. The staff, they have been trained now. And if there were any who were left behind, between yesterday and today, they would have been trained. So we were focusing on training, focusing on making it safe, making sure our staff, they understand. And I guess we forgot to unlock the gate. So, but persons were passing along the side. Persons were not prevented from going there. But of course, vehicles were obstructed from going there. And also, in speaking with staff, they said they had some concerns that you would get larger numbers than were permitted. You know, we had at one time gatherings of 10, gatherings of 20. And I realized that the staff did have some judgment in that, because we have seen, I'm sure you've seen photos of what took place in Bathway. And over 2 weekends, the weekend before, perhaps it was a smaller crowd, and last weekend, it just exploded. And while we may feel safe and comfortable, we do have to realize that as we reopen, the threat becomes different. It becomes more real in our society, in our communities, whether it's a total foreigner who comes to visit, or whether it's a Grenadian. It doesn't matter. The thing is, this thing is no respecter of persons. And if I am sick, I can infect my daughter, I can infect my sister, my mother. And we've seen a lot of scenarios like that happen in foreign media, where persons, you know, were really remorseful that they ever went out. But we know people have to go out. But it can happen. And as we reopen, this is one of my major concerns, the wearing of masks, how people conduct themselves, and the safety. And I am well aware, and they have some persons who defended that they need to go out. People have been cooped up for a while and so on. But I think we're blessed here, because most people can go out on their doorstep. Farmers have been allowed to go to their gardens and so on. And if people are reasonable, you can have small social events with 10, 20 persons and keep the social distancing. And some of it has taken place. So it's not that we fully locked down, but we cannot condone and support this massive kind of outpouring of the FET mode at this time, because it is dangerous. So going back to Grenada, I just want to say that now we're ready. The gates, if they have not been unlocked, will be unlocked. People are welcome, but we will any events that persons want to hold in that site or any other site, they would have to apply to the Ministry of Health. And of course, we will observe the protocols and guidelines of the moment, whether it's 20 people, whatever numbers that the guidelines say, that is what we would have to do. And it is not just to curtail people's enjoyment. We know we are a country of fun and enjoyment, but it is a time when we have to be a little bit more rational and more cautious with what we do.
Word on the street is that Annandale Waterfall has been sold to a private developer.
That is the operative word these days, just like COVID-19. Sale of everything, every government asset now is the word, and the word on the street. And it is not true. And maybe you as a reporter can, or as a media person, would want to investigate. And I invite media persons to do that. And, you know, sometimes people can say all kinds of things, but many times they cannot substantiate. And therefore, if they have the facts, let them bring it. And this is a challenge I'm putting out here. Let them bring the evidence of the sale, of the market, of Grenada, and even Annandale. Now, let me talk about Annandale. Annandale has been, it's a great asset of Grenada. And I understand the concerns. I wouldn't want to see it sold to anybody either. It is a beautiful place, environmentally friendly and so on. But Annandale has a lot to offer that can be used in its natural form, but used to bring more pleasure and enjoyment to people. Grenada has been like that for a long time. And no offense to my staff, they have done their best, but we have not moved on with this attraction in keeping with what people like to do, because while it is an asset for locals, and I would encourage locals to use it, it is also an asset for us in the tourism industry. And so we have to decide whether the contribution that tourism makes to this country is valuable to us or not. And I have heard so much now being said. Farmers are saying that they don't have a market because hotels are closed, restaurants are closed. Thousands of persons out of a job, directly or indirectly. And so tourism supports this country tremendously. And therefore, there may be some small sacrifices that we have to make and ask people to share it with visitors. And we're not asking persons to be content to be excluded. I would not do that. And any asset we have must be shared between locals as well as visitors. Sometimes the visitors love to mingle with the people. And so if we debar locals from these facilities, then we are in effect preventing the visitors from enjoying the best asset Grenada has, which is our people. Now, what we do have is an agreement for a lease of the facilities. So, I mean, there are 2 young Grenadians who have come up with a proposal to enhance what is going on at Annandale and to change it in keeping with environmental guidelines so that there will be moderate changes, but it is still environmentally friendly. One of the things that we did not do was to consult and to speak with the people and let them know what we were doing. And so imaginations have flown, and I think we have let them fly because we did not seek to engage a broader cross-section while we engaged the workers, and there were discussions as to what will happen to them and so on. We did not engage the public. And therefore, I am recognizing that we are working to have a community meeting so that people will understand they will not be debarred, people will be allowed to use, but it has to be in moderation, it has to be managed so that visitors as well can have access. So these people have a contract to have a lease for the property over a period of time. There are certain guidelines that the flora and the fauna have to be respected. Forestry has to have oversight. If they're going to cut a tree, they have to speak to forestry. If they're going to plant one, they have to speak to forestry about it and get permission and so on. And what I have seen is environmentally friendly, but it will give us a cutting edge. And this is one of the things that we have to realize. We have to renew, we have to refresh. When I came back into tourism and we met with the cruise ships, one of the things they said to us is people love Grenada, but what they're saying, we're getting stale. And stale means it's the same old thing. Market Square has not changed. Granitang has not changed. It's pretty much the same thing. We need to freshen it up, not change it dramatically and kill the environment, but use the environment more to give more to people. And that is where we are. And we have not been able to do it from the Ministry of Tourism with our staff and with some limitations. And we believe as a government and we believe as a ministry that putting it in the hands of people who understand our policies, who would have to sign to some agreement, is the best thing at this time, because usually when you have a disaster, it's one area. It's some countries in the region and others are safe. It's some other country internationally and others are safe. This COVID has hit every aspect of business and industry in the world. It has hit every country. Every country now is trying to rebound, and there's going to be stiff competition. And while our Annandale, when we look at the numbers of persons who used to go to Annandale before, even visitors, and we look at it now, I mean, over a period of time, it was one of our considerations that the numbers have dropped, and they're saying it's the same Annandale. And we believe that these people have fresh eyes, they're young, they have experience in the tourism industry, and I will leave the details of these persons for another sitting because we plan to to speak to the community on this, but I want to assure you, I do not believe any government, least of all this government, will ever sell an asset such as Annandale. It belongs to the people. But if it can still belong to the people, and it can be put in the hands of people who have the zeal, the enthusiasm, and the knowledge, and the finances to do something more, to give us a cutting edge and a competitive edge in tourism and employ more people. And one of the agreements is that persons from the area will get preference for jobs. But of course, you have to have the skill. So I think people will be happy to hear that. And I think we will very soon effectively kill that word on the street that says that government is selling everything. Thank you.
All right, let's go to viewers and listeners who may have questions for the minister. First question comes from Facebook. Minister, what is the difference in safety protocols from accepting a charter flight and not a commercial flight returning from a red zone?
The charter flight gives us the opportunity for better management. Once you go commercial, a flight, for example, American Airlines want to do 5 flights daily. No, if we say yes, it would be 5 flights. Can you imagine 1,000 people in 1 week that even though they may have tested negative overseas, because you can test negative for a PCR today and 3-4 days, 5 days later, test positive. This disease takes some time to develop in the system and to show manifestation through the test. We want to be able to test people, not for us to test them, but for them to be tested. We want to give them the period of time in which we will accept the test, and we want to be able to check it first. In Grenada, they have to upload the test results and send it to us so that we can get back to the airline and say, John can come, Jane cannot come. If we just open to commercial flights, we think the risk at this time is just too great to say come in with any amount of flights. The charter allows us to pace it so that we can assess each flight coming in terms of result. It gives us a number of days in which we can reassess and say, okay, we got 1 on arrival of the flight, and that number remains same, even though we have done testing. So that is the difference is our ability to exercise some measure of control on not the name of the person who comes in, but the health condition of the person who comes in. And we want to take our time. I would love to see a lot of planes coming in. We would love the monies and the business to start, but we're just being cautious. And this is the directive we've been given by our government and our cabinet.
A YouTube question: how were the contracts awarded? Was it put out to public tender, or were the developers, or did the developers make an offer to develop the sites?
It was a long process. It was in the newspaper. I don't recall which papers, but I can get that to you and it can be checked. It was advertised. We had 3 bids, and that one really stood out, and I wasn't involved in it. There was a committee set up, a committee of persons involving forestry, involving persons in tourism, and so maybe a 3 or 4 man committee, and they assessed the proposals, and one was selected because I saw that proposal that won, and I support it personally because I think if they deliver what they have, it would give us that kind of edge that we want, cutting edge.
Any updates on our students in China? Since the outbreak of the COVID, there have been requests to come home. Any latest developments or communication with the folks over there?
Yes, our after the cruise repatriation, our next priority really has been those students, especially students, younger people who have stayed overseas for years. Some may have come, but especially like China, most of them would have stayed all the 5 years or whatever number of years they had to study. We are working with the ambassador there. She has a listing of the students. Arrangement is being made, but as you can recall, the UK borders were closed, and I'm not even sure they're open to flights from China now. They may be at this time. My memory doesn't serve me well on that one, but the borders were closed, and so we could not arrange flights for them. Now that borders are opening up, it has become easier. And so the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is working with the ambassador there to arrange that kind of flights to assist. But we're also looking nearer. There are some students in Cuba who graduate about the 16th, 17th of this month, next couple of days, and some who have finished in Jamaica and Barbados. And we have heard their cries, and so there is an agency that is working with the airlines now to see students to return from nearer field. And I believe we might have a few from US, since the legislation or the regulation now that everybody has to start to study virtually, and that those who have visas, that will be terminated. So I expect we will have students from those countries as well.
All right, let's take this call. Good morning, caller.
Hello, good morning. Madam Minister, could you give us, share some light as to a flight that came in from Barbados on Sunday, and passengers disembarking that aircraft were able to join their families?
Thank you, caller. Minister?
Barbados. I don't recall how many. Do you know how many persons came on that flight?
Sorry, the call has ended, Minister.
Maybe call a flight. I don't. Yeah, so that's all right. I don't recall a flight coming in with from Barbados, but I'll just speak of a generalities. Sometimes when a few persons come in, like family members, and I mentioned it before, the homestay, over the period, a few persons have been allowed to go into a homestay based on the relationship with it. So if there is a family coming in, 3-4 persons, a few have been allowed by the Ministry of Health to go, but it is not widespread because we find difficulty in monitoring until we have the app established and the geofencing. But I know a few have been allowed to go. So that may have come into that category. It is few and far between, and it is well researched. The home is checked before persons are let out, because we did it before without doing our homework and it didn't turn out right. And we would like to continue, but with more checks and balances. So it may have happened, I don't know, but I don't recall a flight coming in from Barbados.
In relation to plans to develop the sites, how long are the leases? And do the plans call for Grenadians or nationals or visitors having to pay to enter these sites like Annandale and Granatang and so?
Visitors do pay something, as far as I understand, in some sites, and in some sites they don't, which is lamentable, because I checked with St. Kitts and Nevis, I checked with Antigua some months ago when I went to a meeting, and I asked, do you charge? Because about a year ago, the trails at Granatang, for example, and there are a few trails, they were overgrown with bush, they became difficult, and we spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to get those trails back on. And I mean, with 2 or 3 days of rains, the way the bush would come up, it does take quite a bit of financing to do that. And I believe that we do need to charge something for persons who want to use those facilities. I don't think we should put any new fee now. This is a difficult time. Early on, before COVID, when we were looking, I am a proponent of that persons must contribute something small, because I believe that is the only way we can maintain it and keep it at its maximum. With the new, Granatang remains the same for now. Annandale, there may be a small fee, there may be special consideration for persons who live in the area. This is something we had not discussed before, that we plan to discuss with the developer. How do you treat, we talked about jobs and the distribution of jobs and prioritizing persons in the area. I did not think about a fee for the people in the area, but that could be discussed. But I believe even Grenadians would like to see it in top shape. So if you say $1, $2, a fee that doesn't hurt, I do not see anything wrong with that. I would support that. I hope it doesn't deter anybody from going there, but I believe it is necessary.
There is a actually, I have somebody on the line holding a while. Good morning.
Yes, good morning to the senior public servant of this country who is beautifully answering the questions that is posed to her, because the fact is that we are paying your salary and you're accountable to us. You have to serve us. I want to talk about LEAT. Now, there was this thing about reduced taxes, which was an impediment to LEAT and the cost of travel. There was this thing that was going on where the persons had some petition asking for the reduction of taxes from the governments of the OECS and the Caribbean. Now, I want to find out what are the plans for the government to reduce the taxes on LEAT or whatever flights that are coming in, so that it will make the traveling public, entice people to travel. Then you talk about all these other airlines, not you're here, about all these other airlines that keep on coming on. I want to find out, have you all checked the safety records of these people, these airlines? Because I understand quite a few of them, it is alleged that some of these planes are aging and they need to be replaced.
Thank you very much, caller. Minister?
Okay, as you well realize, some of what was said was broken up, but I think I got the gist. So let me assure this citizen that I am well aware who pays my salary, and I have high respect and regard for that, and I do my utmost to be deserving of that salary. So fear not, I know I'm a servant of the public. All right, in terms of the LEAT, LEAT is a long story. Let me try to make it short though. LEAT in recent years has not been allowed to operate as a business. There was always interference in terms of where the flight went, which island got more, which island got less. And of course, there was shareholders who had a bigger say, and it was not necessarily a fully business operation. I have been to several meetings, and I know our Prime Minister has always said, in terms of the taxes, he's willing to waive the taxes because he's a statistician, and what he said was, if you lower the taxes and the cost of the ticket becomes less, more people will come. So what you lose with one individual, you will gain in terms of the volume. And it makes common sense to me. And I have said that in every meeting I have gone to. And Grenada is the only country that has been willing, and I will say that in any forum, Grenada is the only country that has publicly said, maybe there might have been one other exception, but by general rule, we have consistently said that we are willing to reduce the taxes. Because if somebody can just add a few dollars or with the same money go to Miami or New York or somewhere else, they will go there rather than go into another Caribbean island. And Grenada has done exceptionally well with intra-Caribbean travel. Our visitors, our numbers are about third after the USA and Canada. I think we are about third. Caribbean persons coming from the Caribbean, particularly at some seasonal events like Carnival, for example. Our numbers really just go sky high in terms of visitors. So we value that, and we believe that more could have been done or should have been done. It didn't happen, but we did our part. As an example, the last call that LEAT made to ask member states to contribute to keep them afloat, keep them flying. Grenada, as far as I know, was the only country that gave $1 million. Nobody else did. There were promises, again, in a meeting I attended, but when last I checked, Grenada was the only country that has done that. So we have always sought to promote Caribbean travel for whether it's business or pleasure. And I don't think it was supported by everybody, but I'll just speak to Grenada. I don't want to go tongue lashing on anybody. I don't think it helps. I know Grenada did what it had to do, paid up when it was supposed to, and also expressed a willingness to decrease on the taxes. The other thing that the caller mentioned was about checking with airlines to ensure safety and security. I mentioned that in terms of One Caribbean. And it's not to cast aspersion on One Caribbean, but because they had not flown into Grenada, we had to go through this process to ensure that their fleet was airworthy, and that is why we're waiting. So we reflect what your thoughts are. We know that these airlines have to be checked. All of the others, the JetBlues and the Air Canada, so they have rigorous testing to comply with periodically, and I believe they would have been doing that. And we are guided by ICAO and IATA on this issue. So we follow up on what we have to do, and we listen to ECA when it's necessary, and that's why we're waiting on ECA. And I believe that is where we have not been able to, why we have not, the only airline that we have not been able to sign off on, because we're waiting on information from ECA. So we're trying to make sure that everybody is safe.
All right, as we wrap up, Minister, there's one person that pointed out you did not answer the question on the length of the lease.
On the
length of the lease.
The length of the lease.
Yes.
I think the lease is about 25 years, but there is an arrangement to review every 3 years so that it can be terminated at any time if the service provider, if the developer is unhappy, or if the government of the day is unhappy. These are built-in things because there are certain things that have to be complied with, and if there is non-compliance, then it can be terminated. But of course, if it is working and we've seen more enjoyment by locals and visitors, then there's no need to do anything. And of course, the initial amount will with every review will be increased as well, so that that person gets a chance, or the company gets the chance to improve on what they do, but also the government gets a chance to increase on the revenues that are generated through that. Sorry, I missed.
No problem. Minister, thank you very much for being our guest this morning. 15 seconds, any final words?
Just to say, to keep on urging persons and to remind them that whatever we do, it is with your health and your safety in mind, but the government would have supported payrolls partially of a number of private sector persons and quite a lot in the tourism industry, for which I'm very happy. There have been hiccups and they're working on ironing it out, but that cannot be continued indefinitely. We have to start getting back and pulling ourselves up by our bootstrings. So there is work to be done. Let us do it in a safe environment. And I welcome comments, I welcome suggestions, and we're looking at a customer service within the GTA, and perhaps we should leave a section for comments and suggestions and even criticisms, because that is how we grow. That is how we serve our country best. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. Continue to stay safe and protect yourself. Stay COVID-free. Have yourself a good day.
And you as well.
Thanks.
Let us all stay COVID-free. God bless the nation.
Thank you. That was Minister of Tourism and Civil Aviation, Clarice Modeste-Curwen, our guest this morning. We thank her once again for being with us. That's the end of my time today. Joseph is up next with Mid-Morning Buzz. I've already stolen 5 minutes of his time. He'll forgive me today, hopefully. Have yourselves a productive Wednesday. Continue to stay safe. Continue to do what you need to protect yourselves. And until tomorrow, God willing, have yourselves a productive one.